Hey everyone, welcome back to the Whispers of Terror channel, where we dive deep into the spine-chilling tales that keep you up at night. If any of you are reading this article, why are you doing it? Besides the money, I think a lot of you are in it for the thrill, for the adrenaline rush. But where's the limit? When does excitement turn into panic? Don't get me wrong, taking a little risk is good for the soul, but in any situation, there are just too many things that could go wrong. I still vividly remember the day I received the call that turned my world upside down, shattering the fragile reality I had built. It was a typical rainy afternoon, the kind of day where the clouds hung low, heavy with moisture, and the streets glistened with the sheen of water from the relentless drizzle. I was sitting in my small, cluttered apartment, staring blankly at the television, the sounds of the world outside muffled by the weight of my thoughts when my phone rang unexpectedly. The voice on the other end was shaky, filled with a mix of urgency and sorrow that sent a chill down my spine. It was my mother, and the news she delivered felt like a punch to my gut that left me breathless. My sister, Lily, had been in a terrible accident. The details were fuzzy, lost in the whirlwind of shock and disbelief that surged through me like a tidal wave. Moments later, I found myself standing at the door of the hospital, the sterile smell of antiseptic unable to mask the underlying scent of fear and uncertainty that hung in the air. As I walked through the dimly lit corridors, my heart raced with each step, each tick of the clock echoing in my ears like a countdown to something I feared. When I finally reached her room, I was met with a sight that would haunt my dreams for years to come, a small figure lying motionless, tubes winding around her like vines in a dark forest, and the beeping of machines a stark reminder of the fragility of life. I felt trapped in this nightmare. My mind raced back to all the times Lily had stood by my side, her laughter echoing in my mind like a sweet melody. I had always taken our relationship for granted, believing she would always be there, just a phone call away. Memories flooded back, like the time we played in the backyard, pretending to be explorers in a world of make-believe, where anything was possible and our imaginations knew no bounds. Those carefree days now felt like a distant dream as I stood by her bedside, a silent witness to her pain and suffering, feeling utterly helpless. For weeks that seemed like an eternity, I lived in the hospital, hoping against hope for a miracle that never came. Each day, I would sit beside her, talking to her, reliving memories, sharing stories that felt so distant yet so dear to me, as if my words could somehow reach her in that darkened state. I could see the faint flicker of life in her eyes, and I clung to that flicker like a lifeline, desperate for any sign that she could hear me. But after a month of endless waiting, the doctors delivered the news that shattered my world into irreparable pieces. Lily would never wake up. They could only recommend a course of action that seemed unbearable, a decision I could never fathom or accept. I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces, each one a painful reminder of everything I had lost in an instant. I left the hospital that day, not only losing my sister but also a part of myself that I would never get back. Grief enveloped me like a heavy cloak, suffocating and isolating, wrapping me in a darkness that felt impenetrable. My life became a series of automated motions, work, sleep, repeat, each day blending into the next, a monotonous rhythm that left me feeling hollow. I stopped visiting places we used to go together, unable to bear the weight of memories that clung to every corner, every shadow. Months passed, and I found myself wandering aimlessly one evening, driven by an unexplainable urge that pulled me towards something I couldn't quite identify. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an ethereal glow across the fading day, and it was in this moment of solitude that I made the decision to return to the forest where we had spent countless summer days as children, where laughter and joy had once reigned. The forest had always been our sanctuary, a place where we created our own adventures and let our imaginations run wild, free from the constraints of the outside world. As I stepped into the familiar woods, the whispers of the past enveloped me like a warm embrace. The rustling leaves seemed to echo with our laughter, and the soft breeze felt like a gentle caress from Lily herself, reminding me of the bond we had shared. I walked deeper into the trees, each step resonating with the memories we had created together, each moment etched into my heart. It was a bittersweet journey as I revisited the old tree house, the swings we had laughed on, and the creek where we had splashed each other playfully, the water sparkling like diamonds in the sunlight. But as I neared the clearing where we had built our fort, I felt a sudden heaviness in my chest, a profound sense of loss washing over me. In that moment, I realized how much I had pushed away, how much I had buried deep within, afraid to confront the pain. Kneeling on the ground, I began to speak, my voice trembling as I whispered to the wind, "I miss you, Lily. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you. I should have protected you." As the words left my lips, I felt a shift in the air around me, as if the forest itself was listening intently, holding its breath. I closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me like a gentle tide. Suddenly, I felt an intense wave of warmth envelop my heart, a flicker of hope igniting within me, a realization that perhaps I could find my way back to the light. It was then that I understood. Lily would not want me to remain trapped in this sorrow, to let her memory be a source of pain. She would want me to live, to embrace life fully, as she had always done with her vibrant spirit and infectious laughter. With this realization, I rose to my feet, wiping the tears from my eyes, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. I walked back through the forest, feeling lighter, the weight of grief lifting ever so slightly with each step I took. As I made my way home, I knew that my journey of healing had just begun, and I was ready to face the challenges ahead. The forest had reminded me that while Lily may be gone, her spirit lived on in the memories we had created together, and in the love that would always remain in my heart, a beacon guiding me through the darkness. Each day that followed became a step toward healing. I began to play the songs we loved, filling my apartment with the music that had once brought us joy and laughter, allowing the melodies to weave through my sorrow. I started writing letters to Lily, sharing my thoughts, my dreams, and my fears, as if she was still there to read them, to offer her comforting words and support. I ventured back to the places we had cherished, allowing myself to feel the warmth of the memories rather than the sting of loss, letting the past fill me with gratitude instead of grief. The laughter we had shared began to resonate within me once again, like a melody that refused to fade away, lifting my spirits and reminding me of the beauty of our bond. It was during one of those quiet evenings, as the sun set and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, that I decided to honor her memory in the most beautiful way I could imagine. I began organizing community events in her name, fundraisers, volunteer opportunities, and activities that fostered togetherness among people. I wanted to create a world where Lily's spirit could thrive, where kindness and laughter echoed through every corner of our lives. Each event felt like a step closer to her, a way to breathe life back into the silence that had settled over my heart like a heavy fog. With each smile I saw and every story shared, I realized how interconnected we all were in this web of life, how our experiences intertwined to create a tapestry of love and support. Months turned into years, and amidst the continuing journey of grief and healing, I found new friendships and connections that filled the void Lily had left behind. People came together to celebrate life, to honor their loved ones, and to support one another through the hardest of times, creating a community bound by shared experiences and mutual understanding. Lily's spirit became a guiding light, allowing us all to lift each other up when the darkness threatened to close in, reminding us that we were never truly alone in our struggles. Even though I would always carry the weight of my loss, I also carried the beauty of her memory, a memory that taught me about resilience, about compassion, and about the gift of living fully, embracing each moment as it came. I came to understand that grief doesn't disappear, rather, it transforms into something more profound, a love that transcends time and space, an everlasting bond that keeps our loved ones alive in our hearts, reminding us to cherish every moment. And so, as I stood on a warm summer evening near the creek where we had splashed water and laughed until our sides hurt, I whispered once again to the wind, "Thank you, Lily." It was a gratitude that flowed from every fiber of my being, a gratitude for the lessons learned, the love shared, and the beauty that life continues to offer, even amidst the shadows of loss, a reminder that life is a precious gift that should never be taken for granted. Hope you enjoyed that spine-chilling experience. Now, let's move on to the next eerie tale. This time, we are venturing into the wilderness. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dense forest, creating an eerie atmosphere as I set up camp for the night. I had chosen a remote spot for my weekend escape, far away from the bustling world and technology. It was just me, my tent, and the symphony of nature. At least, that's what I thought. The chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves provided a soothing backdrop, but as the light faded, a sense of foreboding crept in, wrapping around me like a thick fog. As dusk settled in, I built a fire, the flickering flames providing warmth and an illusion of safety. The crackling sounds danced through the stillness, but soon, I noticed something strange, an uncomfortable feeling creeping up my spine. I brushed it off, attributing it to the isolation and the unfamiliar noises of the wilderness. It was just my mind playing tricks on me, I reasoned. After all, I had come here to enjoy the solitude, to reconnect with nature, and to escape the chaos of everyday life. After devouring my simple meal, I decided to turn in early, hoping that sleep would wash away my unease. As I lay in my sleeping bag, cocooned in its warmth, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The rustling of leaves outside my tent seemed to grow louder, punctuated by the occasional snap of a twig. Just as I was drifting to sleep, I heard it, a low, guttural growl that echoed through the trees. My heart raced as I lay frozen in fear, unsure if it was a figment of my imagination or something more sinister lurking outside. The sound sent chills down my spine, and I felt a primal instinct to flee. Suddenly, there was a loud crash followed by an unsettling silence. With trembling hands, I unzipped the tent flap just enough to peer outside. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows that danced ominously around me, but the forest was still. What could have caused that noise? I convinced myself it was just an animal, possibly a deer or a raccoon, though deep down, I knew it felt wrong. The stillness of the night only heightened my anxiety, and I found myself wishing I had chosen a more populated campsite. The next day, I decided to hike the nearby trails, hoping to shake off my unease and immerse myself in the beauty of the wilderness. The lush greenery surrounded me, and the sun filtered through the leaves, creating patches of light on the ground that felt warm and inviting. But there was something off about the tranquility. The chirping birds fell silent, and an oppressive weight seemed to fill the air, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. I shrugged it off as my imagination, determined to enjoy my adventure and not let fear dictate my experience. As I trekked deeper into the woods, I stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin nestled among the trees. Curiosity got the better of me, and I approached it, feeling an inexplicable pull towards the decaying structure. The door creaked open with a gentle push, revealing dust-covered furniture and remnants of a forgotten life. Photographs hung askew on the walls, their glass cracked, faces staring blankly into the void. An ominous energy filled the room, and a shiver ran down my spine as I felt the weight of history pressing down on me. I quickly left, eager to continue my hike, trying to forget the lingering sensation of being observed, but the image of the cabin stayed with me, gnawing at the edges of my mind. As night fell once again, I returned to my campsite, exhaustion settling in my bones. The fire crackled back to life, and I tried to shake off the unease from the cabin, but the darkness felt thicker this time, wrapping around me like a shroud. I could feel the shadows lengthening, creeping closer with each passing moment. As I sat by the fire, I caught a glimpse of a light flickering in the distance, not the steady glow of a campfire, but an erratic, pulsating glow. My pulse quickened as I stared into the dark, my instincts screaming at me to stay put. What was it? Intrigued and unnerved, I decided to investigate, despite the warning bells ringing in my head. I grabbed my flashlight and followed the strange luminosity, careful to stay on the well-trodden path. The closer I got, the more I realized it was not a campfire at all. It was something otherworldly, a bluish light hovering just above the ground, casting an eerie glow that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding with each step, the beam of my flashlight trembling in my grip. Suddenly, the light flickered and disappeared, plunging me into darkness. My gut twisted in panic, and I turned to leave when I noticed a figure standing back on the trail, a man, tall and foreboding, his silhouette stark against the backdrop of trees. Panic surged through me, and I quickly ducked behind a tree, my breath visible in the night air, each exhale a reminder of my vulnerability. "What are you doing out here?" I heard him call into the darkness, his voice gravelly yet calm, sending a chill down my spine. My mind raced. Should I respond? Should I run? I remained silent, my heart thumping in my chest like a war drum. He walked closer, shining a flashlight in my direction, and I held my breath, praying he wouldn't find me. The shadows danced around us, and I felt as if I was caught in a nightmare, unable to wake up. Suddenly, the man turned sharply and walked back down the path, disappearing into the shadows. I waited a few minutes, my heart racing, before I dared to leave my hiding spot. My instincts screamed for me to return to my campsite, but curiosity lingered, drawing me back to the path he had taken. Something wasn't right, and I needed to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing my fears. Upon returning to my campsite, I found my tent torn open, as if something had slashed through it, a chilling sight that sent a wave of terror crashing over me. I fumbled with my gear, shoving everything into my backpack, frantically scanning the area for a safe place. The realization that someone, or something, had invaded my space filled me with dread. That night, I sat in the remains of my campfire, clutching a knife, my eyes darting at every rustle. Ghostly sounds surrounded me, and I could swear I heard whispers on the wind, faint yet unmistakable. Sleep eluded me as paranoia consumed my thoughts, each creak of the forest amplifying my fears. I felt like a prisoner in my own mind, unable to escape the terror that had taken root. The morning light finally broke through the trees, dispersing the darkness that had felt so suffocating. Heart heavy and exhausted, I began my hike back towards civilization, but the forest seemed to conspire against my escape. Trails I had previously traversed felt foreign, trees appeared denser, and shadows seemed to loom larger, closing in on me like a predator stalking its prey. Just as I thought I was near safety, I heard a soft voice from behind, drawing my attention. "You shouldn't have come here," it whispered, a cold breeze brushing against my neck, sending shivers down my spine. I spun around, but found nothing, only the haunting silence of the forest, as if it had swallowed the voice whole. Fueled by fear, I sprinted through the woods, branches clawing at my skin, leaving scratches that stung like fire. Every footfall seemed echoed by a shadow behind me, relentless and closing in, a presence that I could feel but not see. My lungs burned, but I pressed on, desperate for the safety of the trailhead, my heart hammering in my chest like a drum. Finally, I burst into a clearing, my heart racing as I stumbled upon a group of hikers preparing for their journey. Relief washed over me as I approached them, gasping for air, my mind racing with the horrors I had just endured. "What happened to you?" one of them asked, concern etched on their face, their eyes wide with curiosity. "There's something in the woods," I stammered, "something watching." They exchanged worried glances, but I could see excitement glimmering in their eyes, as if my fear ignited a spark of adventure within them. "You're just imagining things," one of them chuckled, dismissing my terror, but I knew what I had experienced was real, etched into my memory like a scar. As I walked away from the forest, the weight of dread lifted slightly, but my mind kept replaying the events of the past few days. The man, the whispers, the light, nothing was as it seemed in that wilderness. I had ventured into nature searching for peace, but instead, I had stumbled upon a haunting reminder that some secrets in the woods are best left untouched, hidden beneath the surface like a dark current. I would never forget that weekend, the terror etched into my memory, a ghost story born from the beauty of the wild. And though I escaped with my life, a part of me would always wonder about the darkness lurking just beyond the trees, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to wander into its grasp. The wilderness, I realized, is not just a place of beauty, it is a realm of mysteries, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs, and where the echoes of the past linger like shadows, forever haunting those who dare to tread its paths. Hope you enjoyed this spine-tingling wilderness. Now, let's move on to the next creepy tale. This time, we're passing by a gas station. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. As the sun sank below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the desolate landscape, I found myself standing beside Mr. Joe, a Navajo soldier who had witnessed more than his fair share of nightmares and horrors. We were on patrol, a routine mission that somehow felt more like an expedition into the unknown, a journey into the heart of darkness. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, prickling with an instinctual fear. I had heard tales of the old gas station, whispered legends that spoke of its haunted past and the tragedies that had unfolded there. Tonight, those stories would come to life in ways I could never have anticipated. When we finally arrived at the gas station, its once vibrant colors were now faded and peeling, the roof sagging under the relentless weight of countless storms and the passage of time. The flickering neon lights struggled to stay alive, sputtering like a dying ember in the night. Joe motioned for me to stay close, his eyes scanning the darkness with a cautious intensity. "Something feels off," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper, as if he feared the very walls might overhear him. I could feel it too, the pulse of something otherworldly lurking just beyond our sight, an unseen presence that sent shivers down my spine. As we ventured inside, the door creaked ominously, a warning we both chose to ignore. The interior was a time capsule, frozen in the 80s, with dusty shelves lined with outdated snacks and rusted soda cans that had long since lost their fizz. A thick layer of dust coated everything, as if the place had been abandoned for decades, forgotten by the world outside. We switched on our flashlights, the beams cutting through the darkness to reveal cobwebs and broken glass scattered across the floor like remnants of a lost era. But it wasn't just the remnants of a bygone time that sent chills down my spine. It was the palpable sense of being watched, as if the very walls were alive with memories and secrets. "Did you hear that?" Joe suddenly asked, his brow furrowed in concentration. I strained my ears, catching a faint rustle coming from the back room. It was soft at first, almost like a whisper carried by the wind, but it grew louder, more insistent, like a voice beckoning us closer. Against my better judgment, we moved toward the sound, our flashlights trembling in our hands, illuminating the path ahead with a flickering glow. As we approached the door, it swung open with a jarring groan that echoed through the silence. I clutched Joe's arm tightly, my heart racing in my chest. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay, a heavy reminder of the years the place had stood vacant. And then, we saw it, a shadow darting across the room, just beyond our line of sight. My breath caught in my throat. "What was that?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and curiosity. Joe remained silent, his gaze fixed on the darkened corner as if he were trying to decipher a riddle. Before he could respond, the shadow morphed into a distinct form, a tall figure galloping on horseback, blurred and indistinct, as if it were a mirage in the night. My pulse quickened, an instinctual fear taking hold of me. "Did you see that?" I exclaimed, my voice barely above a whisper, but Joe simply nodded, his expression grave and serious. "It's him," he whispered, as if revealing a sacred truth that had been passed down through generations. "The writer. They say he roams these parts, searching for something lost." We knew we had to follow. Without another word, we slipped out the back door into the cool night air, the chill sending a shiver down my spine. The moon hung high above, casting a silvery glow that illuminated the path ahead like a beacon in the dark. In the distance, the echo of hooves resonated, a rhythmic beat that matched the pounding of my heart, a call to adventure that I couldn't ignore. We dashed forward, adrenaline coursing through our veins, driven by a potent mix of fear and curiosity that propelled us into the night. The landscape was barren, punctuated by cacti and scattered debris from the gas station's glory days, remnants of a forgotten past that whispered of better times. It was then that we stumbled upon a clearing, and my breath hitched at the sight before us. There, in the center, stood the figure of a man on horseback, shrouded in darkness and mystery. He was dressed in a long coat that fluttered in the wind, the brim of his hat casting a shadow over his face that obscured his features. The air buzzed with an electric tension, an unspoken understanding that something significant was about to unfold, and suddenly, he turned, locking eyes with me. What I saw sent chills down my spine. His eyes were hollow, void of life, yet they seemed to see straight into my soul, piercing through the layers of my being. I felt a weight pressing down on me, an overwhelming urge to flee, to escape the intensity of his gaze, but I remained frozen in place, unable to tear my eyes away. Joe beside me, however, seemed entranced, his gaze unwavering as if he were drawn into the depths of the rider's sorrow. "He's searching for something," he murmured, his voice filled with an ancient understanding, as if he could feel the weight of the rider's burdens. As if sensing our presence, the rider began to move, urging his horse forward until they vanished into the depths of the night, swallowed by the shadows. "We must follow," Joe insisted, a fierce determination in his voice that ignited a spark of courage within me. I hesitated for a moment, uncertainty gnawing at my resolve, but something deep inside me knew we couldn't turn back. We were already entwined in this strange tale, destined to uncover its secrets, whatever they may be. We picked up our pace, weaving through the shadows that danced around us. The atmosphere shifted, the air crackling with energy as if the night itself was alive, pulsating with a rhythm all its own. lost in the frenzy of the chase, I barely noticed the ground beneath us begin to change. The barren expanse gave way to lush, overgrown vegetation, vibrant and full of life, a stark contrast to the desolation we had just left behind, a glimpse of a world untouched by time. Before long, we reached a clearing at the edge of a shimmering lake, its surface reflecting the star-studded sky like a mirror. The rider stood at the water's edge, his figure silhouetted against the moonlight, creating an ethereal scene that felt almost otherworldly. It felt as if we were intruding on a sacred moment, a ritual long forgotten, as he whispered something to the water, his voice a low, haunting melody I couldn't quite decipher, a song of longing and loss that echoed through the night. Curiosity propelled me forward, and as I took a step closer, the water rippled, revealing ghostly images beneath the surface. Faces I recognized from the stories, the gas station robbers, their souls forever trapped in this liminal space between worlds. Their eyes stared wide with terror, mouths moving soundlessly, pleading for release from their eternal torment. My heart sank as I realized that the rider was a keeper of their souls, forever tied to this cursed place, a guardian of their fate. Suddenly, Joe grabbed my arm, pulling me back with a sense of urgency. "We need to go," he said urgently, his voice laced with fear. "This isn't just a tale, it's a warning." But I couldn't tear my eyes away from the spectral visions that danced before me. Each one told a story of desperation, of greed, and of ambition turned against them, a tragic reminder of the consequences of their choices. I could feel the weight of their wrath pressing in on me, a palpable reminder of the dangers of the world we inhabited, the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. Yet, I couldn't abandon them. What if we could help? I suggested, desperation creeping into my voice, a plea for understanding. Joe shook his head vigorously, his expression fierce. "They've passed on, and it's not our place to interfere. The rider has his duty. We must respect that," he insisted, his voice firm and resolute, but I could feel the conflict within him as well. Just as Joe spoke, the ground beneath us trembled, a low rumble that reverberated through the air like a warning bell. The rider turned toward us, and in that moment, I saw the fury in his hollow eyes, a tempest of emotions swirling within them. The lake began to boil, the spectral images twisting and turning in a frenzied dance, a chaotic display of their suffering. A voice boomed from the depths, a chorus of anguished souls crying out for release, their pleas echoing in the night. We stumbled backward, panic seizing us as the reality of our situation sank in. Joe grabbed my hand, and together we fled back into the dark embrace of the trees, urgency propelling us forward as if the very shadows were chasing us. The haunting melody of the rider echoed behind us, resonating with a sorrow that was both beautiful and terrifying, a reminder of the lives lost and the stories left untold. We dashed back toward the gas station, lungs burning, legs aching, but it didn't matter. The shadows pursued us, a harbinger of the unknown, whispering secrets that sent chills down my spine. We burst through the door, slamming it shut behind us, panting as we leaned against the worn frame, our hearts racing in unison. The flickering lights cast erratic patterns on the walls, the atmosphere charged with a raw energy that left us on edge, a palpable tension that hung in the air. I looked at Joe, his face a mask of determination tinged with fear and uncertainty. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, the weight of the night pressing down on us. He took a deep breath, collecting himself, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for answers. "We stay alert. There's still danger lurking here, beyond what we've seen," he replied, his tone grave, as if he understood the gravity of our situation better than I did. The night wore on, each minute stretching into eternity, a sense of dread settling over us like a heavy fog. Countless noises came from outside, howling winds, rustling leaves, and distant whispers that seemed to echo through the darkness. Every now and then, I would catch a glimpse of shadows flitting past the windows, a reminder that we were not alone, that something was watching us. The weight of the air grew heavier, thick with anticipation as we waited for whatever may come next, our hearts pounding in our chests. Just as the clock struck midnight, silence enveloped us, an eerie stillness that felt almost sacred. The world outside seemed to hold its breath, a suspended moment that felt charged with electricity. And then, out of the stillness, came a soft tapping at the door, a sound that sent a jolt of fear through me. My heart raced, a primal instinct screamed at me to flee, but curiosity held me captive, anchoring me in place. Joe slowly approached the door, his eyes narrowed in concentration, every muscle in his body tense with anticipation. "Be ready," he cautioned, his voice low and steady. With a hesitant hand, he reached for the doorknob, and I felt the tension in the air shift once more, a palpable change that made my skin crawl. He pulled the door open just a crack, and in that instant, the shadows rushed in, a surge of darkness that enveloped us. We stumbled back as the darkness enveloped us, swirling like a tempest, a maelstrom of despair and sorrow. Faces emerged from the abyss, grotesque and haunting, twisting in a dance of anguish and longing. I couldn't escape. I was trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, each face a memory, a story begging to be told, a plea for recognition. "Don't look back!" Joe shouted, pulling me from the chaos, his voice a lifeline in the storm. Together, we barreled toward the back exit, the shadows clawing at our heels, desperate to claim us as their own, to drag us into their eternal night. We burst onto the open night, the cool air hitting my skin like a jolt of electricity, a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness we had just escaped. I gasped for breath, but we couldn't slow down. There was no time for hesitation. The gas station stood ominously behind us, a relic of the past, but now it felt alive, a sentient being watching our every move, its walls whispering secrets of the night. We sprinted toward our vehicle, the echoes of the haunted gas station fading as we reached safety. We climbed inside and slammed the doors shut, the engine starting with a reluctant roar that echoed in the stillness. As we sped away, I looked back at the gas station, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw the rider standing at the entrance, his figure illuminated by the moonlight, a ghostly silhouette against the night. His hollow eyes seemed to pierce through me, filled with a sadness that spoke of untold stories and regrets timelessly bound to that desolate place, a reminder of the lives lost and the darkness that lingered. We drove in silence, both of us processing the night's events, the weight of what we had witnessed settling heavily on our shoulders like a shroud. I realized, at that moment, that the world was filled with mysteries, some that should remain unsolved, buried beneath the surface. And while I would forever carry the memories of the shadows and the lost souls, I also understood one thing: some secrets were never meant to be unearthed, remnants of the past best left undisturbed. As we made our way home, I glanced out the window, the desert stretching endlessly before us, a vast expanse of darkness punctuated by the twinkling stars above. The stars twinkled brightly overhead, a reminder that even in darkness, there was light, a flicker of hope in the vastness of the night. But with that light came shadows, real and haunting, eternal reminders of the mysteries that lurked just beyond our sight, waiting for the next unwitting soul to stumble into their embrace. Hope you enjoyed that spine-tingling experience. Now, let's move on to the next creepy tale. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. The night was all-consuming, enveloping the last remnants of daylight as I found myself driving along the desolate highway, accompanied by Mr. Joe, a Navajo soldier whose calm demeanor was as serene as the expansive desert sky above us. We were on patrol, our breaths visible in the crisp night air, surrounded by the profound silence of the wasteland that stretched endlessly in every direction. An eerie tension lingered in the atmosphere, underscored by the unsettling sensation that we were not entirely alone in this vast emptiness. Joe had always held a deep respect for the old tales passed down through his ancestors. This land speaks, and if you listen closely, it tells stories long forgotten, he would often say, his voice resonating with the weight of generations of wisdom. I, a mere observer in his world, found myself captivated by his conviction, yet skepticism gnawed at the edges of my mind, casting doubt on the supernatural elements he spoke of. We drove past barren stretches of land, the moonlight casting long shadows over the cracked earth, until we finally arrived at the remnants of a dilapidated gas station that stood stubbornly against the relentless march of time. Its walls bore the scars of faded graffiti, remnants of a once bustling place, and its windows were cracked like the stoic faces of the forgotten souls who had once inhabited this forsaken locale. As we stepped out of the vehicle, the wind howled through the skeletal remains of the building, creating haunting melodies that echoed eerily in my ears. Joe led the way, his silhouette cutting through the shadows like a determined warrior navigating the forgotten ruins of civilization. The darkness clung to us like a heavy shroud, wrapping around us as we creaked forward into the gas station, and the scent of gasoline and rust assaulted my senses, mixing with the stale air of abandonment. Each fallen sign whispered tales of a world that had long since abandoned this place, a ghostly reminder of the lives that once thrived here. Inside, the silence grew deeper, heavier, as if the very air was thick with the weight of unspoken words. The dim light of our flashlights danced across the walls, revealing peeling posters advertising long-extinguished services, relics of a bygone era. A chill ran down my spine as I noticed movement at the edge of my vision, a fleeting shadow darting behind a stack of old tires. My pulse quickened, but I dismissed it as a trick of the light, a mere figment of my imagination. Joe, however, stopped suddenly, his posture alert and tense. "Did you see that?" he whispered, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. I thought I did," I stammered, glancing around nervously. The oppressive atmosphere thickened, as if something unseen was watching us, lurking just beyond the reach of our flashlights. Joe nodded, ever the vigilant sentinel, his instincts honed by years of experience. "Let's press on," he suggested, and I could hear the unspoken understanding that we had crossed into a realm where the ordinary rules no longer applied, where the veil between reality and the supernatural was thin. We ventured further into the gas station, moving past remnants of forgotten lives, rusted tools, broken glass, and discarded debris littered the ground like the remnants of a lost civilization. With every step, the shadows seemed to solidify and stretch, eerie shapes emerging briefly before slinking back into the darkness, as though they were alive. I felt an overwhelming urge to leave, to escape this foreboding place, but curiosity tugged at me, compelling me to remain and uncover whatever secrets lay hidden within the decaying walls. Suddenly, a low growl pierced the stillness, reverberating through the air like a thunderclap, sending a jolt of fear through my spine. Joe froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the sidearm holstered at his hip. "Stay close," he commanded, his voice low and steady. "We need to find the source of that sound." I nodded, adrenaline surging through my veins as we moved cautiously toward the ominous noise. It seemed to emanate from the back of the station, near what appeared to be a storage area long forgotten by time. As we stepped closer, an unearthly shriek shattered the silence, echoing off the walls like a warning bell. I caught a glimpse of a dark figure flitting across the small window at the back, a fleeting shadow that sent my heart racing. What was that? I gasped, fear clawing at my throat as desperation tightened its grip on my chest. Joe, maybe we should. But before I could finish my sentence, Joe was already advancing, his gaze fixed on the shadows ahead with unwavering determination. We can't turn back now. We need to understand what's happening here, he replied, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. As we pushed through the clutter, we finally saw it, a grotesque creature, unlike anything I had ever encountered in my life. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and its malformed body twisted unnaturally, as if it were a shadow given form. It snarled, revealing sharp teeth that glinted menacingly in the dim light, a creature born from nightmares, a manifestation of our deepest fears. Instinct took over, and I stumbled backward, colliding with a stack of crates, sending them crashing to the ground in a cacophony of noise. The sudden sound startled the creature, redirecting its fury towards us with a feral intensity. Joe remained undeterred, advancing to confront the beast with all the resolve of a warrior prepared for battle. We have to move, he shouted, motioning for me to follow as he led the way. We fled, racing through the gas station, our echoing footsteps chasing us into the night. My heart thundered in my chest, panic fueling my speed as we burst out into the open air. The moon hung high above us, illuminating the surrounding wasteland, but the night had grown deeper, darker, and more sinister, as if the very landscape was conspiring against us. We darted around the perimeter of the building, seeking refuge behind the dilapidated remnants of an old diner that had once offered solace to weary travelers. As we crouched behind the worn structure, catching our breath and trying to regain our composure, I caught sight of a tall figure emerging from the shadows. A man on horseback, his silhouette stark against the moonlit sky, appeared like a specter from another realm. He wore a long cloak that billowed dramatically in the wind, and his presence commanded an unsettling aura, as if he were not of this world, but rather a harbinger of something far more ominous. "Who is that?" I whispered, my eyes locked on him in a mix of fear and intrigue. Joe's expression darkened, recognition dawning on his face as he understood the figure for who he truly was, a ghost of the night, an embodiment of sorrow and loss. "We need to stay out of sight," he replied urgently, his voice tinged with an uncharacteristic tension. The mysterious rider paused, seemingly sensing our presence in the shadows. He tilted his head slightly, and even from a distance, I could feel an overwhelming sense of loss emanating from him, a sorrow that seemed to permeate the very air around us. As he lifted a hand, my gaze instinctively followed his gesture, directly to the gas station, where the dark energy still swirled like a storm waiting to unleash itself upon the unwary. "What is he doing?" I uttered, my voice barely above a whisper, but Joe was already moving closer, compelled by the twinkle in the rider's eyes that seemed to beckon him forward. "He's calling to the spirits trapped here," Joe murmured, his reverence palpable, as if he were witnessing a sacred rite. "He's searching for something, or perhaps someone." My heart raced in anticipation and dread as the rider breathed deeply, allowing the night air to envelop him like a cloak. The gas station seemed to murmur in response, a chorus of souls awakening from their slumber, their cries echoing in the stillness. I felt the encroaching shadows shift and weave around us, as if they were marveling at the return of their own, drawn to the figure that stood before us. Suddenly, from the depths of my memory, fragments of stories surfaced, tales of the gas station's demise, of lives extinguished too soon at the hands of robbers who had once terrorized this place. My breath hitched as a series of spectral apparitions flickered into existence, their faces twisted in anguish, caught between worlds. The ghosts of the gas station robbers emerged, their expressions twisted with regret and despair, forever bound to their choices, their fates sealed in the annals of time. "Look!" I gasped, pointing toward them, a mixture of awe and horror coursing through my veins. The air crackled with raw emotion as I watched their ethereal forms swirl around the rider, who remained a statue, untouched by time and oblivious to their torment. They whirled in haunting dances, pleading for redemption, their mouths moving soundlessly, echoing silent accusations that reverberated through the stillness of the night. "Please, we need to help them," I implored Joe, who stood entranced, lost in the sorrowful tableau before us. "They can't find peace. They need to be set free." Without warning, the energy in the air shifted. The rider spun on his horse, revealing an empty gaze that seemed to pierce through the layers of reality. "They are beyond saving," Joe solemnly replied, his voice steady yet pained, as if he were mourning the loss of hope. "The past cannot be undone. Their fate is sealed, and we cannot interfere." "No!" I cried out, feeling a fierce determination ignite within me, fueled by the desperation of the spirits swirling around us. "We can't just let them suffer." With newfound resolve, I stepped forward, toward the cacophony of lost souls, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel their pain seeping through my skin, an aching lament that begged for release from their torment. The rider and Joe began to move, but I stood my ground, heart racing as the spirits swirled around me, their fragmented forms brushing against my skin like a chilling breeze. I could sense their desperation and sorrow, tangled in the web of their choices, their regrets echoing in the silence. "I will find a way," I declared, my voice unwavering, not knowing what would come next, but feeling an unyielding need to act. As if responding to my words, the night shifted, the atmosphere grew heavy, as though the very fabric of reality was warping around us. The ghosts paused, their chaotic dance settling into a silent plea, a collective yearning for release. I swallowed hard, stepping deeper into their midst, whispering words of comfort and understanding. "I see you. I feel your pain. You are not forgotten. You deserve peace." Joe stepped back, his expression a mixture of disbelief and admiration, his eyes wide as he witnessed the unfolding scene. "You're insane, but perhaps, just perhaps, you might reach them," he murmured, brimming with a strange blend of fear and awe as he watched the ethereal light begin to coalesce around us. As our hands locked, an explosion of light erupted, illuminating the night with a radiant glow that seemed to banish the shadows. The spirits surged forward, swirling around us, their faces transforming from anguish to relief, their expressions softening as they felt the warmth of compassion. Their whispers rose into a crescendo, speaking of their regrets but also of their release, the burdens of their past lifting like a heavy fog. The rider nodded, his somber countenance softening, and then in one fluid motion, he led the way into the heavens, guiding the lost souls toward the light. In that ethereal moment, time stood still, the boundaries of reality dissolved, and the gas station, with all its darkness and despair, shattered like glass. I could see through the veil as the spirits ascended, snagged by the light, casting off the darkness of their earthly tether, finally free from the weight of their burdens, liberated at last from the chains that bound them to this world. As dawn broke over the horizon, the shadows dissipated, and the gas station stood still, transformed into a mere memory of what it once was. The remnants of the dark night melted into a serene dawn, painting the once desolate scene in hues of gold and amber, washing away the remnants of fear and sorrow. I turned to Joe, breathless and awash with the weight of what had just transpired, my heart still racing from the intensity of the encounter. Did we really help them? I questioned, bewildered, my mind struggling to comprehend the enormity of the moment we had just witnessed. Joe regarded me with a solemn smile, the lines of his face softened by the morning light, a sense of peace settling over him. You did something powerful. You showed them compassion, something lost amid the darkness. You listened, and in listening, you set them free, he replied, his voice filled with a quiet reverence. As we retreated from the remnants of the gas station, I realized how frail our understanding of the world truly was. Beneath the surface lay mysteries waiting to be unveiled, lives entangled in unseen threads, stories yearning to be told. The spirits had left an indelible mark on my soul, my heart now forever entwined with the echoes of the past, a reminder of the fragile balance between light and darkness. On that day, under the vast expanse of the desert, I learned that existence was composed of both light and darkness, intertwined like the dance of shadows that flickered across the ground. With each adventure, the unknown might weave its enchantment, revealing the beauty hidden within the haunting, urging us to find the courage to confront our own shadows and embrace the stories waiting to be told, stories that could bridge the gap between the living and the lost, illuminating the path toward understanding and compassion.